Right now, President Biden is in Brazil for his final G20 summit, just after he made a major foreign policy decision authorizing Ukraine to use long-range American weapons inside Russian territory. That is a massive political policy shift, as nearly 50,000 Russian and North Korean troops have been deployed to push Ukraine out of Russia's Kursk region. And this morning, the Kremlin spokesperson said using those long-range missiles would be, and I'm quoting here, throwing oil on the fire of the war. CNN's chief national security analyst, Jim Sciutto, joining us now. Why is this authorization happening now?
The biggest change we've seen in recent weeks, and by the way, the Biden administration has been pushed to do this by many of its closest allies for months and refused, is that deployment of many thousands of North Korean troops in Western Russia to take part in the war in Ukraine. This is a remarkable and unsettling development. You have a nuclear North Korea deploying thousands of forces to Europe to take part in the largest war in Europe since World War II. So that's significant. Add to that the increasing pace and scale of Russian air attacks on Ukraine, including just over the weekend, one of the largest missile attacks since the start of the war. And the Biden administration made the decision to finally, in the view of Ukrainians, allow Ukrainians to strike some of those firing positions, right? I mean, what they want to use these weapons to do is hit positions inside Russia where Russia is firing into Ukraine, including against civilian targets. The combination of those two things seems to have pushed the administration over the finish line on this.
And of course, Russia is listening to all this, so usually people maneuver, right? Countries maneuver when they hear this, but what impact might this actually have on the battlefield?
On the battlefield, it could have a significant impact because, you know, the trouble Ukraine has, right, is it fires back against Russia, including inside Russian territory. Russia can strike those firing positions. Ukraine has not been able to use U.S.-supplied weapons to strike the firing positions inside Russia. So presumably it will impact Russia's ability to lay waste to large parts of Ukraine. Not stop it, but at least impact it. The question is, does this lead to escalation, right? And that's always been the question since the start of the war, and that's what's held back the Biden administration with each new weapons system, not just long-range missiles, but tanks, you name it. And each time it's supplied them, and the war has not expanded beyond Ukraine, which has been the real fear. So there are a lot of folks in Europe who've said that risk and that threat from Russia has always been exaggerated. Listen, we're going to test it again here.
Yeah, certainly that has been one of the big conversations as to whether or not escalation happens, but it has hamstrung, what Ukraine can do. I want to ask you about what Russia's strategy is at this point, because as you just mentioned, they have been targeting major infrastructure, mostly electricity in Ukraine.
They want to freeze the Ukrainians. You know, I mean, it's such an obvious strategy. Winter is coming to Ukraine, and every year of this war, and this is now we're close to 3 years into it, Russia amps up attacks on energy infrastructure before the winter because they want to inflict pain on the Ukrainian people. It's an obvious strategy. It gets cold there in the winter, and this is forgotten on this. So it's rich of the Kremlin spokesperson to talk about throwing fuel on the fire when Russia does that literally every day, right, since it invaded the country by its own choice in February 2022. The trouble is you have Americans that echo those arguments. So when the Biden administration made this decision, I was looking for it, and it happened right away. Marjorie Taylor Greene, Donald Trump Jr., they immediately attacked the Biden administration with no mention of what Russia was up to the very same weekend.
We have been seeing this over and over and over again, and we will see what happens when the president-elect ends up in power again. Jim Sciutto, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Kate?
So cryptocurrency stocks have skyrocketed since Trump won the election, and the president-elect is surrounded by people with a stake in the industry. CNN has new reporting now on how the country could be looking at the, quote, the most pro-crypto Congress ever.
For 30 years, I've been saying publicly what people are saying themselves. I have enough money, I could just shut up. Gotcha.